Welcome back to My Mind MashUps for another deep dive.
Great to be here.
Today, we're looking at something really fundamental, something incredibly personal. How you actually see yourself.
Yeah, it's a fascinating topic. We're going to touch on, brain science, psychology, and how our digital lives are changing things.
Exactly. And hey, if this kind of stuff interests you, please do take a second to like, share, subscribe, follow My Mind MashUps wherever you listen.
We're on Amazon Music, Audible, Facebook, Pocket Casts, Spotify, YouTube.
All the usual places.
Yeah.
Your support really helps us keep making these deep dives.
So today, self-image. We'll unpack some of the, surprising science behind it. Like, why does that mirror reflection feel so right?
Even though it's flipped.
Right.
Yeah.
And what everyone else sees is different. Plus, we'll get into those digital filters. They're everywhere now.
It makes you think, doesn't it? Like if you took a candid photo, just a quick snap, showed it to 10 friends, would any two describe it exactly the same way? Probably not.
Definitely not. It really shows how subjective perception is, both how others see us and maybe even more importantly, how we see ourselves.
So our mission today is to sort of navigate this complex world of self-perception, pull out some key insights for you.
Try to make sense of that face in the mirror and on the screen.
Okay, let's jump in. That feeling when you see a photo and think, is that really me? It doesn't match the mirror. What's happening there?
Well, a big part of it is something called the mirror exposure effect. Basically, you see your mirror image constantly, daily.
Right, when you brush your teeth, wash your face.
Exactly. So your brain develops a preference for that specific reversed image simply because it's seen it so much. It feels familiar, comfortable.
So it's not about accuracy, it's just familiarity.
Yeah.
Like my brain goes, yep, seen that one a million times, that's the one I like.
Pretty much. One source, sparks, put it nicely. We trust the mirror because our brains prefer the image they see most often. Familiarity breeds preference, in a way.
Meanwhile, everyone else sees the non-flipped you, the version that shows up in photos. And that's why photos can feel, well, a bit off sometimes. Uncanny, almost.
Precisely. And it's not just the flip. Think about selfies.
Oh, yeah?
How close do you usually hold your phone?
Pretty close. Maybe a foot away.
Right. And that close distance, especially with the wide-angle lenses on most phone cameras, can actually distort your features. Research suggests it can make your nose look up to 30% larger.
30%. Wow. No wonder selfies can look weird sometimes.
It's significant distortion. It definitely makes you pause and think about how much we rely on selfies and how they might be, subtly warping how we think we look.
Okay, quick demo idea you mentioned, the nose test.
Yeah. It's simple. Take one selfie really close, like 12 inches, then take another one holding the phone at arm's length.
And compare.
Compare them. Look specifically at your nose. You'll likely see a difference. The arm's length one is generally considered a more accurate representation, less distorted.
Definitely trying that later. Okay, so beyond mirrors and camera lenses, what's happening inside our heads, our brains?
Okay, this is where the neuroscience gets, really cool. Using fMRI scans, researchers have found these highly specific areas in the brain, face selective patches.
Face patches, like dedicated circuits just for looking at faces.
Exactly. Key areas like the OFA and the FFA in the visual cortex. And here's the kicker. These patches don't just passively record faces. They create what researchers call observer-specific geometries, or a face space warp.
A face space warp. What does that even mean?
Okay, imagine a grid. Now imagine mapping faces onto that grid. Your brain subtly stretches or compresses parts of that grid for each face you recognize, including your own. It's like your brain has its own unique way of tuning into features, a slight emphasis here, a subtle downplaying there.
So my brain isn't just seeing features. It's actively constructing a unique version of a face based on its own processing style.
That's a great way to put it. Dr. Nancy Kanwisher, who's done loads of work in this area, calls it a private perceptual fingerprint for faces.
A private fingerprint.
Yeah. Meaning, if you had 100 people look at you, their brains could, theoretically, construct 100 slightly different internal portraits, none necessarily wrong, just different personal interpretations.
That's mind-blowing. So the image I hold of myself isn't just visual input, it's heavily filtered through my brain's unique processing.
Exactly. And it gets even more active than that. Our brains use something called predictive coding. They aren't just waiting for information, they're constantly predicting what you're going to see.
Predicting? How?
Based on everything you've seen before. Think of it like your brain holding an internal sketch or a model of your face. This model is built up over years.
Okay.
When you look in the mirror or see a photo, your brain compares the incoming light patterns to its prediction. It asks, does this match what I expect? Then it updates the model based on any differences.
So my brain has this running hypothesis about my face.
Yes, and that hypothesis, that internal model, isn't static. It's influenced by your mood right now, how tired you are, even cultural messages about beauty you've absorbed over your lifetime. Like, say, Eurocentric beauty standards could subtly shape my brain's template for what it expects or prefers to see.
Precisely. Cultural conditioning plays a role. So bringing it back to the mirror.
Yeah.
That reversed image feels right because it constantly reinforces the prediction your brain has built based on a lifetime of seeing that specific reversed view.
And the photo, the non-flipped one, might clash a little with that ingrained prediction, making it feel slightly uncanny or wrong.
Exactly. It introduces data that doesn't perfectly align with the deeply learned model. Now, let's layer on the digital world. This complicates things further.
Filters, editing apps.
Oh, yeah. They're ubiquitous now. Think about apps like Facetune or just the standard filters on social media. Their use is incredibly widespread, especially among younger people. One statistic from 2024 suggested around 80% of teens were using them.
80% is huge.
It is. And what's maybe more striking, another study found that about 59% of teens said they often couldn't even tell the difference between a filtered image and an unfiltered one anymore. Wow, that's concerning. It suggests these altered images are really becoming normalized.
It does raise concerns. This constant exposure to idealized, digitally smoothed, often quite unrealistic versions of faces, including our own, can feed into what some call a distorted self-critique loop.
A critique loop.
Yeah, you start comparing your actual appearance, pores and all, to these perfected filter ideals. And that comparison can chip away at your perception of your real appearance, maybe impact self-esteem.
And this is leading to real-world consequences, right? I've heard the term Snapchat dysmorphia.
Yes, that and also Zoom dysmorphia, which popped up more during the pandemic with all the video calls. It refers to this trend where people become fixated on perceived flaws they notice in their selfies or webcam image.
Flaws that are often exaggerated by the camera angle or lighting.
Exactly. And then they seek cosmetic procedures to look more like that filtered or distorted digital version of themselves. Dr. Shadi Kourosh called webcams portable funhouse mirrors.
Funhouse mirrors. That really captures it because they're not accurate reflections.
Not at all. And the stats back this up. There was a reported increase of over 85% in cosmetic consultations where patients specifically cited their appearance on Zoom or in filtered selfies. Even just the typical webcam distance, maybe 30 centimeters, can make your nose appear about 7% larger than it is.
So it's not just seeing yourself differently, it's actively wanting to become that digitally altered version.
That's a major concern. It ties into another idea, avatar drift, where people create these idealized online avatars, maybe in games or virtual worlds, and then start internalizing that avatar as who they want to be, blurring that line between digital fantasy and reality.
This is all incredibly complex. It really makes you wonder, what happens when this system of self-perception goes really fundamentally wrong?
Well, that leads us to think about certain conditions. Take body dysmorphic disorder, or BDD. It's a serious condition where someone becomes obsessively preoccupied with perceived flaws in their appearance.
Flaws that others often don't even notice.
Exactly, or they're very minor. In BDD, there seems to be an overactivation of detail-focused processing in the brain, and perhaps a weakening of holistic processing, seeing the face as a whole. The focus narrows intensely onto the perceived defect.
And treatment usually involves therapy.
Yes, cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, is the gold standard treatment for BDD. It helps people challenge those negative thought patterns and develop healthier coping mechanisms.
Are there other, maybe rarer conditions that affect face perception?
There are. One is prosopometamorphopsia, or PMO. It's a very rare neurological condition where faces appear distorted to the viewer.
Distorted how?
It varies, but people might see features as drooping, enlarged, wrongly positioned. Some have even described faces looking, quote, demonic. It's a dramatic illustration of how reliant we are on specific brain circuits for accurate face processing.
That sounds terrifying. What about the opposite end, like aphantasia, where people can't form mental images voluntarily? How does that affect self-image?
That's a really interesting question. People with aphantasia generally report they can't consciously picture their own face or anyone else's. Yet, intriguingly, many still report having visual dreams.
So they can generate images, just not consciously?
It seems so, which suggests That our sense of self, our self-image, might not be solely tied to conscious visual imagery. It could be stored or represented in other ways, maybe through proprioception, general knowledge, non-visual memories.
So our brains have backups or alternative routes for knowing who we are. It's not just one system.
It appears that way, which leads to the big philosophical question, really, with all this biology, technology, psychology. Can we ever see the real us, objectively?
Yeah, is there even such a thing?
That's debatable. Philosophers like Thomas Metzinger argue that what we experience as our self is fundamentally a model created by the brain, a self-model. It's a representation, a useful simulation, but not necessarily a direct window onto objective reality.
So I'm experiencing my brain's best guess or its most useful story about who I am.
That's the core idea of his self-model theory. And think about beauty standards. They vary so much across cultures and time periods, right?
Definitely. What was beautiful in Victorian times is different from today or from, say, Afrofuturist aesthetics.
Exactly. And these culturally learned ideals can actually shape how our brain's reward pathways respond when we see certain faces. What feels good to look at is partly learned.
Which, again, points away from some objective, universal, real appearance. So
Yeah.
are there any practical ways to maybe get a slightly less subjective glimpse? Any tools?
There are a few things you can try, more as thought experiments. Mirror reversal apps or websites exist. They show you the non-flipped image, how others see you.
That could be jarring.
It can be. Also, getting a portrait taken with a standard 50mm lens from about 5 feet away minimizes the distortion you get from wide-angle phone cameras held close up. It's generally considered a more neutral perspective.
Like a classic portrait lens.
Right. And more technologically advanced, 3D facial scanning can give you a very precise, objective map of your features, strip it of lighting effects or angle distortions.
Interesting ways to play with perspective. Now, this Schrodinger's selfie idea you brought up, that sounds intriguing. What's that about?
It's a neat conceptual metaphor borrowing from quantum physics, specifically Schrodinger's cat.
The cat in the box, both alive and dead until you look.
Exactly. The idea applied here is that our self-representation, especially maybe online or before we present ourselves, exists in a state of potential multiple possibilities at once, like the cat's uncertain state.
Okay.
And taking and sharing a selfie or stepping out in public is like observing the system. It collapses that wave function of potential selves into one specific presentation. As C and Cedar magazine put it, each portrait is like Schrodinger's selfie, infinite possibilities, trapped in a single dimension.
So every selfie I post is just one possible version of me, crystallized from many potentials.
That's the analogy. And it also connects to the observer effect. We inherently change how we present ourselves when we know we're being or about to be observed.
Yeah.
We curate that collapsed state.
That adds another layer of complexity, doesn't it? This whole discussion has been really eye-opening. It makes you realize just how intricate our self-image is.
It really is. And maybe to help you reflect on this personally, we could suggest a little take-home challenge.
Yeah, I like that. What have you got?
Okay, 3 simple things. First, mirror versus photo. Next time you see both, consciously note your gut reaction. Which feels more you? Why might that be? Just observe it.
Okay, notice the feeling.
Second, try some third-person journaling. Describe yourself, appearance, mannerisms, whatever, as if you were a neutral observer, a stranger writing a character sketch. Keep it objective.
That sounds difficult but interesting.
It can be revealing. And third, if you feel comfortable, maybe ask 3 trusted friends, perhaps anonymously, for just 3 words they'd use to describe you. Then compare their words to your own self-perception. See where they align or differ.
Those are great practical ways to explore this. It really drives home that the image we hold of ourselves isn't simple at all.
Not at all. It's this amazing, constantly shifting tapestry woven from our biology, our tech, our culture, and yeah, maybe even a touch of that quantum-like uncertainty.
So we really hope this deep dive gave you some food for thought, maybe a slightly different lens, pun intended, through which to view yourself in the mirror and on your screen.
It's a journey of understanding, really.
And if you found this valuable, please do remember to like, share, and subscribe or follow My Mind MashUps. Again, we're on Amazon Music, Audible, Facebook, Pocket Casts, Spotify, YouTube. We'd love for you to join us for future deep dives.
And one final thought to leave you with, tying back to that predictive coding idea.
Okay?
If your self-image is partly a prediction your brain is constantly making and refining, what kind of prediction are you actively choosing to cultivate about yourself? Something to ponder.